Hello and welcome back. I am Benjamin Williams, and today we're going to be doing another real device configuration video. We're going to be doing that on this equipment right here. This is my Cisco Catalyst 3750 switch up here on the top, and down here at the bottom we have my Cisco 4400 series router. So I'm going to break down the topology that we're going to be working with today, and then after that we're going to hop into the configuration of the actual devices themselves. So let's go ahead and get into it. All right, so here's the map of the topology. So we already have our Spectrum router hooked up, of course, for our internet connection. And my Spectrum router has an IP address for the internal network of 192.168.1.1. That is the default gateway to get all of the devices within our home network out to the internet. So what we're going to do is we're going to connect an Ethernet connection to our own ISR Cisco router that we just showed you guys, and that connection is going to be on our router on the gigabit 000 interface. It's going to get its IP address from our Spectrum ISP router. So it's going to be on the 192.168.1.0 network on this gigabit 000 connection. And then on the gigabit 001 connection on our router is where we're going to define our own internal network within my room. So that's where we're going to configure the IP address of 192.168.2.0. And for the actual gigabit 01 interface, its IP address is going to be 192.168.2.254. And then from there, we're going to run it down into our switch, the fast Ethernet 01 connection on our switch. And this IP address is going to be 192.168.2.1. And it's going to get its IP address via DHCP because we're going to configure a DHCP pool on the gigabit 01 interface. So it'll give all of our devices within my internal network within our room. It'll give its IP address, it'll get its IP address from DHCP instead of having to manually configure each device's IP address. So we're going to create a DHCP pool on our router for the 192.168.2.0 /24 network, and that's going to be inside of my room. So definitely excited to get into this configuration right now. So let's go ahead and hop into it now. All right, I went on ahead and flipped the switch on for our router, plugged it up, it's booting right now. So I'm going to go ahead and take my console cable that is right here and plug into the console so we can kind of see the device booting. So let's come to the back side of this router, and our console port is right here. So I'm going to go ahead and take, where's that console cable? It's trying to run away from me. And let's plug it into the console port, the click that we like. And let's go ahead and load up PuTTY on our computer and watch the kind of boot process. All right, so let's go to device manager. Bring it over to our bit screen, because it's over here on my little desktop. Bring it over to the bit screen. There we go. Let's go to ports, and we can see that it's connected. USB to serial port is connected off of COM5. So let's bring up PuTTY now. PuTTY right there. Bring that over to the bit screen as well. Click on serial, leave the speed the same. Go ahead and put COM5 in there and click open. And we should see this router booting up here in a second. So let's see if we're connected in. Hopefully we see something here in a second. Just give it a little bit of time. A little bit of time and some grace. All right, so we can see that our router is booting. So once the boot has completely finished, sorry about that, we will go ahead and get into the actual configuration itself. So I'll be back as soon as the boot is over. All right, so we are at the end now. We're going to put no for the initial configuration. Yes, we want to terminate auto install. And hopefully we can take over our device here in a second. Let's see. I'll be right back as soon as this finishes up. It's got a little bit more to go, I guess. Come on. it's always a little pain waiting for the router to boot. I don't know. I just don't have the, I guess I don't have the patience sometimes. But as soon as this is over, I'll be back. So here's my ISP Spectrum router, and here's the Ethernet connection. And of course, the other Ethernet jack is going to run into my ISR Cisco router. So let's go ahead and go back to my router now and make that port connection to the gigabit 000 connection on my Cisco router. All right, so here is the other side of the connection. So let's go ahead and connect into the gigabit Ethernet 00 port, and that is this one right here, right beside the console cable. You can see power over Ethernet, and then it says gigabit 000 right there, and it's also another gigabit 001, and these are some SFP modules. Sorry about that, getting stuttered up on there. But let's go ahead and make this power over Ethernet connection. All right, so there we go, made that connection, and let's go back up here to our console on the router. All right, so we have our iPad right here for the point of reference, and here is our router right here. So let's go to enable. Let's do a conf t, and first let's just change the host name to Brian's router. All right, let's do that. All right, now let's go ahead and let's do a do show IP interface brief. Okay, so we can see that the gigabit 000 connection that we just made, its IP address is unassigned. It's administratively shut down. So let's do this. Let's do a, it's going to interface gigabit. It's going to interface gigabit Ethernet 000. All right, and let's do a IP address. Let's do an IP address. If I can spell IP address, DHCP. Okay, and let's do a no shut. And let's give it a few seconds, and it should get its, yep. So it just changed, well, it just changed to the down state. Now it changed to the up state, and it should be getting a DHCP IP address here in a second from our ISP router. So let's give it a little bit of grace. All right, and we can see the syslog message right there. It says we have been assigned a DHCP IP address of 192.168.1.31, and it has a /24 bit subnet mask. So now if we do a exit and we do a do show IP interface brief, we can see that our gigabit 0/0/0 has an IP address on our home network. So we know that our Spectrum ISP router has an IP address of 192.168.1.1. So let's make sure that we can ping that. Let's make sure we can. So let's do ping 192.168.1.1, and we can ping the Spectrum ISP router. So now that we know the IP address of this gigabit 000 interface, let me go ahead and write that on this chart. So it has an IP address of 192.168.1.31. All right, so we have that for a point of reference right there. Perfect. All right, so now we want to make, we want to go ahead, I'm going to go ahead and load up the switch and make the connection from the router into the switch. So let's go ahead and do that next. I decided before I actually make the connection, I'm going to go ahead and configure the IP address. So let's do an interface gigabit Ethernet 001, and we can see right here that we want our internal network. Let me move the iPad over just a little bit. We want the internal network to have an IP address of 192.168.2.0, but this gigabit 01 is going to be 2.254. So let's go ahead and give it its IP address now. Let's do an IP address 192.168.2.254. And it's going to have a /24 subnet mask, so 255.255.255.0. And that should be it. And let's do a no shut. Let's do a do show IP interface brief. And we know that the status and the protocol is down because we haven't made the actual, oops, this is actually blocking the output. We can see that the gigabit 01 IP address is configured, but the status and the protocol is down because we actually haven't made the connection to the switch yet. So let's go ahead and do that. And then, well, I can do this as well. Let's do an exit right quick. And let's do a, we know that the gigabit, we can go into interface gigabit, Ethernet 000 is going to be our IP NAT outside, okay? And then we can do an exit and we can do a interface gigabit Ethernet 001 is going to be our IP NAT inside. All right, so we know that that is going to, and then we can also do our, we can also go ahead and do our DHCP configuration as well, because we want all of our PCs to automatically obtain their IP address information when they're connected into the switch. So let's do an IP NAT pool, and let's give it the name of Ben's network. So Ben network for the name. Oh, oops, I didn't finish the command. We want to start the IP address with 192.168.2.0. And it's going to be a /24 math. Oh, nope, that said, oops, let me do the context. Sensitive help. So, okay, we want to do an IP DHCP. I'm sorry, I'm having a brain fart. IP DHCP pool. And we want to name that Ben's network. I was about to say, okay, now we're good. Okay, now let's do a default router of 192.168.2.254. And we want to press enter on that. We could do a DNS. We can do a DNS, just a DNS server of 8.8.8.8. Okay, and let's give some context sensitive help as well. Let's do an exit, and let's do a I did the DNS server, I did the default. Okay, and I also want to exclude. Can I do exclude? Okay, I may need to go back into DHCP configuration. So let's do an IP DHCP pool of Ben's network again. Network, okay. And I want to do, can I exclude in here? Can I do an exclude? No, exclude. So I can't do an exclude. So I may need to go do an exit and let's do an IP DHCP exclude from right here. Exclude, yeah. Address of 192.168.2.254. I want to exclude that IP address. Do an exit. No. And I want to go back into IP DHCP pool of Ben's network just to make sure that everything is configured correctly. Get some content sensitive help. So I did the default router. I did the DNS server. Let me make sure I don't need to do anything. Oh, and I need to do the network. So let's do a network of 192.168.2.0. It's going to be a /24, so 255.255.255.0. All right, and let's do an exit. So I think that is good. Let's do a default route as well. Let's do IP route. Let's do 0.0.0.0. We want to do a subnet mask of 255.255.255.0. And we want to, IP route O.O.O.O.O.O.O.O.O. Okay, okay, this is too many options. Let me do a content sensitive help. This is the destination prefix, so O.O.O.O.O. Destination mask should prefix mask should be 255.255.255.255, and it should have an IP address of 192.168.1.1. So we want to send that to our default gateway. So that's good. All right, so I think that should be it. Sorry, you guys, I received a phone call, so that's why we just paused the video. And I realized as soon as I got off the phone call that I actually made the wrong configuration right here. So let's do a no IP route O.O.O.O 255.255.255.255 192.168.1.1. That is not correct. We want to do an IP route for O.O.O.O 192.168.1.1. All right, yeah, we want to do all, we want to encompass all IP addresses. So, and we want to send that to the ISP router that we configure, as we can see from our starting topology. It has an IP address of 192.168.1.1. All right, perfect. So now the last thing we need to do is configure a ACL to permit our network that we are going to permit for our inside network. So let's do an access list. Let's do an access list. List 1. We want to permit 192.168.2.0 wildcard mask of O.O.O.O.255. All right, perfect. And let's do a IPNet source, IPNet inside source list 1 interface. We want to overload the gigabit 0/0/0. So we want to do gigabit. Move that out the way so you guys can see. Gigabit Ethernet 0/0/0, and we want to overload it. All right, so that should do right there. That should do. So let's do an exit. And now let's go ahead and hop over and make the connection from our router into our switch. So first things first, let me cut on my switch. So let's grab the power cord, go to the back side of the switch and plug it in and let it boot first. So let's, all right, we can hear the fan starting up on it. So let's let our switch boot. I'm gonna go ahead, I have it connected to the router, and we're gonna connect it back to the router here in a second. I just want to make sure everything boots correctly on the switch. So let's go ahead and change our console port from the router, and let's take it and plug it into the switch console port. I'm gonna have to move this over just a tad bit so I can make this connection right here to the console port of the switch. All right, so it's in now. So let's load up PuTTY and make sure everything boots correctly. All right, it's open on PuTTY, and we can see our switch is booting. So as soon as this is done booting and up and running, we're going to make the connection from the router into the actual switch itself. All right, we have our switch up now, and we can see that it's fully booted. All right, so now let's go ahead and Well, first things first, let me close this putty session. Oops, I accidentally clicked the device manager, but that's all good. Okay, let's close this putty session. And I'm going to connect back into the router right quick for our console connection. So let's do that first. Let's connect back into this console connection, which is right here. Perfect. And we have an Ethernet cable right here. And we're going to connect the router to the switch. So let's take one side of this Ethernet cable and connect it into the gigabit 001, which is right up under this one, which is 000. So let's turn this way, because it goes in this way. Get it? We're dealing with these tight spots on these Ethernet ports. There we go. The click that we like to hear. And let's go to the switch and do the same thing right about there. All right. So we seen the light come on the switch, which is good. So let's head back over to our laptop now and start up putty. All right, we're connected in. Let's do Conf 5. Let's put our kind of topology. I'm gonna move it down a little bit for point of reference. All right, and let's click open. All right, so we should be on the router. Yep. Let's do a do show IP interface brief on the router. And we can see now our gigabit Ethernet 01 connection is in the up state because we connected it into the switch. So I just wanted to confirm that this was going to be in the up state, and it is. All right, so now we can go over into the actual switch. So I'm going to unplug the console port from the router and connect it into the actual console port of the switch. So let me exit out of putty right quick. All right, and let's take our console cable and connect it into the console port for our switch, which is right here. Let's do that. All right, and we can see our light on our switch is now green. So it had to move through the listening and learning state for STP, and we can do port fast to make the interface come straight up. But those videos would be later on. We can definitely, do little optimizations like that within your network. But let's pull putty back up and let's finish our configuration. I accidentally clicked VS Code instead of putty. So let me close VS Code down. All right. Go to serial, Conf 5. Let's do an open. All right. And we should be on our switch. We are. Let's do an enable. Let's do a show IP interface brief. All right. So our VLAN 1 is currently down. So let's do this. Let's do a let's get through that. Let's do a configure terminal. Let's do a host name of beans switch, right? And let's go into interface VLAN 1, and let's give a IP address DHCP. Because if we remember we created the DHCP pool on our ISR router for the 192.168.2.0. So I'm guessing that this switch will get the first IP address, which would be 192.168.2.1. So let's see if that's going to happen on our fast Ethernet. Well, it's connected to the fast Ethernet 01, but it's connected off of VLAN 1. So let's see if it's going to get an IP address. And let's do a no shut. All right. And let's give it a few seconds and see what it does. Hopefully we get an IP address of 192.168.2.0. Yep, and we did. So we got the first IP address of 192.168.2.1. So that's perfect. That's what I thought it was going to be. So let's do a do show IP interface brief. And you can see now that the VLAN 1 has an IP address of 192.168.2.1. It's got its IP address from DHCP, and we configured DHCP on our ISR router. So everything is looking good as of right now. So what is the next step? So let's make sure that we can ping 192.168.2.254, which is our router. Oops, accidentally, I think I pressed. Oh, I gotta do a do ping. Sorry, do ping 192.168.2.254. Yes, and we can ping our Cisco ISR router. So that's perfect. And let's see if we can ping. Let's see if we can ping the Spectrum ISP router, which has an IP address of 192.168.1.1. Oh, do ping 192.168.1.1. And we can also ping the Spectrum ISP router. So that is looking good. That is looking good. So now the next step is to connect our iPad in to the fast Ethernet 03 connection off of our switch. And hopefully it can access the internet, as well as it's going to get its IP address from DHCP, so we don't have to manually configure it. So let's go ahead and make that connection now and see what happens. All right, so we're down here on the ground. It's all good. Let's go ahead and connect our fast Ethernet 03 connection to our switch and connect it into our iPad right here. So let's go ahead and make this connection. All right, we can see that we're getting some notifications right there that lets us know that we are physically connected, and we can see that our port on our switch is going through the listening and learning state for STP. Like I said, we could cut on port fast so it can automatically go into the forwarding state, but it's all good. Let's go to our iPad now. This is our iPad, and I'm going to disconnect the Wi-Fi. So make sure we're not on the Wi-Fi. And let's go over to our settings. And let's go to our Ethernet connection. Let's go right here. And as we can see, let's see if we can get this to focus in on the IP address information. Can we get it to? Yes. Yes, it can. So we can see our IP address for this iPad is 192.168.2.2. It has a subnet mask of a /24, and its default router, or its default gateway. I'm not sure why it's not showing good on this screen. Let me try to turn down the brightness. Yeah, I think that helped it out. So we can see the router's IP default gateway is 192.168.2.254, and that is our ISR router. So let's see if we can go out and go to the internet. So let me I have the NFL up right here. So let's just try to refresh the page, or let's just do a go. And as you can see, we can access the internet. Let's click on the game today. The Miami Dolphins and the LA Rams are going to be playing today. Let's click on Miami Dolphins. We can see everything is loading up as it should. We can even click on this article from ESPN, see if this is going to load for us. And everything is loading up. So I think that this is going to conclude this video right here. I'm going to set you guys back up in the video and go from there. So if you were able to make it to the end, I do appreciate you watching this video and going through this little simulated lab within my actual room itself. And hopefully, or we are going to definitely, I'm not going to say hopefully, we're definitely going to have a lot more content like this coming to the channel. So thank you guys for watching this one, and I'll see you in the next one.